Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Rubenstein, and you are watching the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokespersons Office. It's February 18th, 2025. Here's what we're talking about today. Israel is keeping the commitments that it made in the ceasefire deal with the government of Lebanon in November and continuing to withdraw from Lebanon. The government of Lebanon is not keeping its commitment to the ceasefire deal. The government of Lebanon is required to disarm Hezbollah. Hezbollah remains armed. The government of Lebanon has not disarmed it. If Hezbollah is armed, it's a violation of the deal. Israel reserves the right to enforce the deal at a time and place of its choosing. It's scary what the Israeli military is finding in southern Lebanon near the Israeli border. In recent weeks, the IDF located an underground bunker that belonged to Hezbollah's special forces. The structure was dozens of meters long. It had living quarters and combat equipment. The IDF destroyed the structure. Hezbollah will not be able to use it in the future. We are not going back to an October 6th reality where a terrorist army that wants to destroy Israel can build up its capabilities on the Israeli border. That's why Israeli forces will remain at 5 key points inside Lebanon for now. These 5 points overlook the Israeli communities behind them. The residents of northern Israel need to know that they will be safe in their homes. One day after the October 7th massacre, Hezbollah in Lebanon opened a second front. More than 60,000 Israelis were forced to flee their homes because Hezbollah was shooting at them. Their safe return home is a key Israeli goal in the war, and it is a goal that is not yet fulfilled. Looking ahead, we are still in phase 1 of the hostage ransom deal. Hamas continues to hold 73 hostages in Gaza. It is our understanding that Hamas is still holding 6 living hostages who are supposed to be released in the first phase of the deal. There is a chance that all 6 will be released on Saturday. If that doesn't happen, then we expect to see 3 hostages released this Saturday and 3 next Saturday. On Thursday, Israel received the bodies of 4 hostages who were either murdered on October 7th and their bodies were taken into Gaza, or they were taken into Gaza alive and did not survive Hamas captivity. It remains to be seen what will happen in phase 2. The deal says that Israel must withdraw from Gaza in exchange for the release of the remaining hostages. The United States and Israel are insisting that Hamas cannot remain the government of Gaza. Hamas, of course, refuses to disarm and leave power. We need every world leader to say clearly, Hamas cannot remain the government of Gaza. Let me repeat that. We need every world leader to say, Hamas cannot remain the government of Gaza. Let's take a few questions from people watching live on our social media platforms, and then it's back to work.
Thank you, Daniel. Our first question comes from our Instagram stories. Do you expect that the Lebanese armed forces are going to step up?
I'm not optimistic. The Lebanese armed forces have had many chances in the past to prevent us from reaching the situation at all where Hezbollah is even stronger than ever, as it was before it decided to open a second front against Israel. Hezbollah is a powerful political force in Lebanon. It is a force in the Lebanese parliament that has the power to block decisions that the government would make to disarm Hezbollah. That's a crazy reality where there is a militia in Lebanon separate from the government, and it has the power to politically stop that government from disarming it. So I'm not optimistic that the Lebanese armed forces will do what it has failed to do in the past. I can only hope that the countries that care about what's going on in Lebanon, such as France and the United States, will tell the truth about the situation, that Lebanon has a choice to make. It can either be a functioning country with a government and no separate militia, or Lebanon can have a separate militia that answers to the government of Iran, and Lebanon, in effect, will cease to be a functioning country.
Thank you. Our next question comes from X. There's a report in Egyptian media that Egypt is developing a plan to rebuild Gaza without anyone in Gaza having to leave. What do you think of that?
I would like to see a solution in Gaza where the people of Gaza remain in Gaza and choose to make peace with Israel. Right now, what we're seeing is people are calling for the reconstruction of Gaza, but they are not calling for Hamas to be out of power in Gaza. We cannot have a situation where Hamas remains the government of Gaza and Hamas remains the recipient of the building supplies and the cement that come into Gaza in order to reconstruct what has been lost. This is untenable, and it simply means that there will be another war at a time and place of Hamas's choosing, because Hamas will take all of the resources and use it to rebuild its military capability over time. So I welcome the Egyptian proposal to think creatively about how the people of Gaza can live in peace with Israel, but there cannot be any kind of reconstruction while Hamas continues to hold hostages and while Hamas promises that it's going to carry out more October 7th massacres until Israel is destroyed. So let's keep an eye on what the Egyptians are proposing, because they have a lot of power, because they are sitting on the other side of the Gaza border. So if Egypt is willing to get creative, I would be optimistic about this. I would accept it positively. But if Egypt is not willing to say that Hamas must be removed from power in Gaza, then I would be quite suspicious of Egyptian proposals.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Carmen on YouTube. Do you believe that the Palestinians should have their refugee status removed? If so, would that help stop providing a reason to attack Israel?
Certainly a key part of Palestinian identity is that the refugees from the 1948 war, which the Arab side started and lost, these refugees from 1948, who are originally 700,000 of them, they and their descendants have the right to return to what is now Israel. This is a key component of Palestinian identity. It is Hamas, it is Fatah, it is every Palestinian political faction believes this. I'm not in a position to change Palestinians' mind about who they are, what they're fighting for, but what I can do is call out any international organization that funds and sustains and perpetuates this fantasy, which is why I focus so much on the role of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which is funded by international donors. It is effectively funding Hamas's education system in Gaza to perpetuate this idea that the Palestinians are forever refugees. My perspective is that the people of Gaza are at home in Gaza, and they are not refugees from somewhere else with a right to go back to that place. If you're in Gaza, Gaza is your home. There's also Palestinians in the West Bank who are calling themselves refugees. That is to say that there are Palestinians in what they call Palestine also saying they're refugees from Palestine. It doesn't make sense. It's a huge contradiction, and we should call it out and try to oppose any effort that this fantasy can be sustained, because it is this fantasy that ultimately fuels Hamas and the October 7th massacre.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Rebecca on YouTube. How does Israel feel about the buildup of Egyptian troops?
I've seen the reports and I am concerned about them. I note the comments recently of Israel's new ambassador in the United States, who said that Egypt is violating its peace treaty with Israel with the level of forces that it has built up in the Sinai Peninsula, relatively close to Israel's border. So we need to keep an eye on Egypt. Egypt has the biggest army in Africa, but Egypt also has a peace treaty with Israel. It's an important peace treaty, and Egypt is an important neighbor, and we should find a way to overcome any differences before there are additional fronts that we don't want to deal with. Egypt has very close relations with Hamas in Gaza, and Egypt has a vested interest in what's going to happen. So I hope we will keep a close eye on this, and perhaps it will be something that we continue to monitor here at this office.
Thank you. This is our final question. Secretary of State Rubio is now in Saudi Arabia. What do you think that he's discussing with his Saudi counterparts?
I think the government of Saudi Arabia would like to see Israel's war against Hamas end, but I also think that the government of Saudi Arabia does not want to see Hamas win. A few days before October 7th, Israel appeared to be in the final stages of reaching some type of negotiated agreement with Saudi Arabia that would have effectively seen Saudi Arabia join the Abraham Accords, that there would be peace and normalization with Saudi Arabia. But now, after the October 7th massacre and the worldwide anti-Israel information campaign that the government of Qatar has funded, it's been a lot more difficult for the government of Saudi Arabia to be publicly close with Israel. We're not going to have a situation where the government of Saudi Arabia is closer to Israel than, say, the UK and France, who have also been quite critical. But I think the Secretary of State is in Saudi Arabia in order to discuss a plan or a vision for the future of Gaza, and a way that Saudi Arabia can have closer public ties with Israel while also not appearing to sell out the Palestinians, who seem to be very high up the tree and keeping to their extreme positions. But it remains to be seen what will come of it. I'll be watching very closely, and as soon as I learn more, I will be telling you. Thank you for watching today. This has been the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizens Spokespersons Office. I'm Daniel Rubenstein. Have a lovely day.